What is up, guys? Welcome in to yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show, covering all Arizona sports, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, doing all things covering Cardinals, Suns. Appreciate you guys making this show a part of your day. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, potentially even tell a friend about the show. You know, oftentimes you guys have been doing that in bunches, and that's how we're able to get our next guest, my guy, Mike Sando, who joined us over at Fox Sports 910 for a while. One of my favorite guests to be able to sit back and just listen to as the main host and him would go back and forth. But Mike Sando, longtime NFL reporter of The Athletic. How are you doing, man? Good morning.
I'm doing great. It's my one of my favorite weeks of the year with the quarterback tiers work done, and we can kind of go through the results and have a lot of different conversations that really sharpen my brain and get me thinking going into the season.
So just to give people a little bit of background on this, I've heard about you talk about this before. How many weeks and months in the making is this list? When do you start sending this stuff out so that people aren't just like, oh, well, they got this in March right after Kyler wasn't, spiraled out of control by, and people have a skewed opinion on him?
Yeah, so I never start until after the draft because we have to know the landscape of like, okay, this team picked a quarterback 5th overall, or this, right? We know who the veteran quarterbacks that are going to be starting will be usually after the draft. So once that we get to there, it'll take me, 6 weeks to 2 months to just kind of get all of the ballots back. And some of it's visiting people in person, a lot of it's on phone, and then it takes a little bit longer to just flesh out having the conversations with people. But I usually try to get done before I go on vacation go on vacation in July, and then we're ready to go. So, you want to get it in that sweet spot before something major changes to affect it. But, while we're super topical.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you are basically having a vacation from your family. I highly doubt you have left your office since these things dropped. It was funny, man. This is every year, it's the thing that's on the list of everyone in the preseason. All right, when is Mike Sando's quarterback tiers coming out? I'm driving. I finished my show in the morning. I'm driving. It drops literally right after. And I'm like, of course it drops directly after the show. I'm very upset that you didn't check with me first. What was your take? Yeah, what was your take on Kyler Murray coming in at 15th? As a non-biased guy, you paid attention to the Cardinals last year. You came on Fox Sports 910 with my guy Jody, the show I was producing each week. You've got a good dose of, and maybe the better dose of Kyler pre-bye week. But what was your take on it?
Yeah, I feel like he's been in a holding pattern the last 3 years. I know he had the injury during that time, but it just feels to me like, the excitement around him peaked. As I look back, I've got on my screen right now his annual results in quarterback tiers, 2020, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and really going into 21 and 22, he had a good chunk of a majority of tier 2 votes. I think people were feeling like, hey, he has a chance to ascend. I think what we've seen since then is just, the flashes of the good play, not the consistency, and definitely an inability to sort of sustain late in the year that has raised, not question marks, but probably defined what he's going to be. At this stage of his career, you wouldn't expect there to be a huge change in trajectory. It can happen with, you see quarterbacks, do better in a different environment or with a different coach or whatever. But for the most part, I think we pretty much know what he's going to be. And from my standpoint, it's like, what can they do around him to be able to win with this type of a quarterback?
I guess I should ask this first. Per your conversations with everyone that's voting on this thing, what would they say is the biggest issue with Kyler Murray? Because the physical traits, I mean, they're outstanding. It's what kept me on Kyler for year in, year out, up until last year, until he just crashed and burned post week 11, post bye week. And now it's really does feel like a make or break it year with Kyler. But what is that? Like, one thing out of everything else, you're like, he just has to fix this, and that will or at least greatly improve where he's at now.
Well, he took a lot of heat a few years ago for the having a clause in his contract where he had to study. Yeah. And I think that, let's just say he's matured and is better than that, but is he exceptional at that? I think that would be a question. I don't know the answer to that, but I think all of the really top quarterbacks have that just almost innate desire to grind and really, really get good at their craft mentally, that side of it. I think for Kyler, that's especially important because he does have a disadvantage of being so small. I think that if the size does affect his ability, uh, just as a pocket passer, right? I mean, a lot of his ability to confound you defensively is what he does out of the pocket or scrambling. He can run and get a first down or make a play, but just to really be great in this game, it helps to be super consistent from the pocket and just reliable. That's the reliable part of the game. It's the splash plays and running are nice to add to your game, but you can't live off of them, especially as you play better opponents. They got game plans for you. They're better defenses in the playoffs, those sorts of a thing. So he's really got to be just an elite student of the game, in my opinion, to flourish in spite of the fact that he is smaller than any starting quarterback in the league.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much of the preseason game that you watched against the Cardinals and the Chiefs. Obviously, it's preseason, a lot of other things going on. Not the biggest story in sports right now. Kyler Murray threw.
I listened to I watched your analysis of it though. I did yesterday.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that. Yeah, then
yeah.
you kind of know where I stand with Kyler Murray, at least at this moment. But it is a far too often thing with Kyler. He oftentimes will throw the ball to the other team, and it's just an issue that he's had where I think you cannot rule out the issue that he just doesn't see guys on the field very well. Maybe that's his height. Whatever, right? I don't want to go after a guy.
Yeah.
He's 2 inches taller than me, which isn't great. Clearly, obviously, not talking about it, not playing it. But in your conversation, I'm just curious because it's the first time ever like this might be a problem. Did anyone bring up the height concerns with Kyler?
No, not too much, but I think it's a given. I mean, I think at this stage of his career, we know that that's what he's dealing with. So I don't think that's it's not anything new. It's there, and it's a reality for him. And if you can't see as well, then you got to be really on it from a preparation standpoint to know where everyone's supposed to be and going to be, right? And
Mm.
so you're talking about it. It's not like he has what's his interception rates are low every year. You think he's got a
Yes,
huge problem with the picks, or
I don't think he has a huge problem with interceptions. You're right. He had 11 last year. That is, obviously not a massive number when, you've got guys like Jameis Winston throwing 30 of them in a season. However, it feels like it comes at the worst times. I would love to see the statistics post by where Kyler Murray's interceptions came from because last year it was week in and week out really bad interceptions. One against Kobe Bryant last year of the Seattle Seahawks where he just throws to the other team. Did it again against Seattle Seahawks when he played them at home. Patriots game, he had an interception that got called back by a phantom face mask. Like, I just wonder if maybe he's not seeing the field, and maybe that's something that people bring up.
I think it's a given. I think we're done. I think people aren't bringing that up freshly, but I do think that that's definitely a thing. I'm actually
Mm.
calling up right now. I'm interested in what you're saying. I'm going to see who had the most damaging interceptions last season. He's not. You can look up like how much EPA was lost on
Mm.
interceptions last
Yeah.
season, and for him, he's middle of the pack. There's 36
Mm.
quarterbacks here. He ranks 18th. So the Cardinals lost 37 points basically off of his interceptions. Uh,
I'd just be
and
curious to know when those
yeah,
came or how big and those
well
were
that
in those moments.
well yeah, this is kind of contextualizing that for us. It
Oh
says
yeah,
that
gotcha.
like Baker Mayfield's and Geno Smith and Kirk Cousins and Jameis Winston had the oh, you may be looking at on a per interception basis. Maybe that's what you're talking
Mhm.
about. Even though he only had 11, you think those 11 were super
More
damaging.
more damning because a lot of those came in the post bye week era of Kyler, where it felt like
Yeah,
each and
so
every week he was throwing an interception.
I can tell you. Oh yeah, there's some big ones in here. I mean, obviously the one to Kobe Bryant was an 8-point swing.
Mhm.
The one to let's see, there's one against the 49ers that did Bosa get him? Nick Bosa?
Must have been early.
Yeah,
That must have
Bosa,
been the first one in the season.
that was week 5, and that lost 6
Yep.
points.
They won
Week
that
4
game, thankfully, but
week
Niners kinda shot themselves in the foot.
Yep. The other one against Seattle was, by Jones, the linebacker, that cost him 5 points, so there's another one against Detroit early in the year. So there's a number of them here. That's an interesting analysis. I'm interested in that topic, so that's something I can look into as we get
Mm,
into the season and just say, hey, who had the most, killer interceptions? In
mm.
fact, I can probably look at it I can probably give it a little bit of a look right now, while we talk, and I'll let you know.
Um, Again, per your conversations with Kyler, does it feel like, or I guess, surrounding Kyler, does it feel like around the league that because you did have him at the 15th spot, or I guess I should say, people voted on this at the 15th spot, the very first quarterback in tier 3, almost like they see the highs of Kyler, which are just magnificent at times, and the lows and the real, like the real valleys of the valleys of Kyler. Does it
Yeah.
feel like the people who voted on this don't know where to put Kyler, and that this year it's almost like, all right, we'll give him one more chance to prove that he's at least a tier 2 guy. He's definitely not a tier 1 guy at this point of his career. And people are their patience is growing thin with Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I would say that people think he's a tier 2 talent who plays to a tier 3 level. So a little bit disappointed in, where he's at, and, wish he could be a little bit more consistent, especially over the course of a season, not just in games, to maximize his potential. And they don't think he's really doing that. By the way, on the interception thing, like, I'm not seeing, well, I'm not seeing an inordinate number of picks that were super costly. Uh,
Mm, mm.
he had 4 that really were, you know, bigger impact, but
Which
I
games
think
were
that,
those? Just out of curiosity.
so those would be, uh, 1 in each Seattle game, 1
So he
against the
lost both
49ers.
those.
Yep, and 1 against, at San Francisco,
He
and
won that one.
one of them at Detroit.
They lost that game. That was a game they were in really in the thick of it with Detroit and
Yeah.
ended up losing that game because they could not move the ball. But I do remember one of the Kyler Murray interceptions in that game. Is it? I mean, all right. Well, maybe it's just something in my eyes that I'm seeing because
It could be. It could just feel that way and feel extra frustrating, to see some of the things happen again. But yeah, like he had 4 of the super costly interceptions. Like Kirk Cousins had 10, Winston 9, Darnold 9,
mm,
Mayfield and Purdy 8 each. Mahomes had 7. So, I don't think
mm.
his were unusual.
How big is the gap? And I understand we have 15-14 between Brock Purdy and Kyler Murray, but I'm also interested in that gap between Stafford and Kyler. And in your opinion, because both teams do have obviously some high level players on them, do you feel like because of that gap, but the players on the Cardinals that despite the deficiencies at quarterback, this team could win the NFC West this year? Or is that just something because of Kyler Murray's at times inconsistency, like you had said, a tier 2 talent that plays like a tier 3 guy, that the Cardinals just can't overcome to be a division winner?
Well, I think, yeah, in their current state, I agree that that's true. Now, what we haven't talked about, but what I've really researched is he needs a lot more help from his defense.
Mm,
You talked about the gap between the quarterbacks in the division. It's kind of funny to me that Brock Purdy's the last guy in tier 2 and Kyler's the first guy in tier 3. There's a big gap in their average vote. Purdy has an additional 10 votes in tier 2. So that's a pretty big gap between tiers. And you feel that. I feel like Purdy's been, the more consistent player. But uh, I also studied, all the quarterbacks, I think, over the last 3 years that have at least, I think, 25 starts, something like that. There's 32 of them. And then we can measure of these 32 quarterbacks, which is a great number because there's 32 teams, who is getting the best help from their defense slash special teams and who's getting the worst. And Kyler's getting the worst. Now, the special teams haven't been the problem for Arizona. It's been the defense. And so with a defensive head coach in Gannon, and with the investments they made this offseason, and with the improvement they made last year on defense, another big jump on that side of the ball is probably the quickest way for this team to win with Kyler Murray.
Mm,
And when you are getting the worst support of any by your defense of any quarterback who plays a lot, the last few years, that's really notable. That's a huge headwind he's going into. So let's just acknowledge that he's at, in that low tier 2, upper tier 3 range. You can win with that type of a quarterback. But you have to be good on the defensive side of the ball. And that's the Cardinals obviously agree. They use their top 5 picks on defense. They signed Josh Sweat. They signed, I think, Dalvin Tomlinson. They made a bunch of moves that were geared to help the defense. And so that is what has to move this year for them to win with a quarterback who's probably going to be similar to what he's been in the past.
My final question, because I want to get you out of here on time, is I just did a show on this literally 30 minutes ago. It doesn't really necessarily matter where they're ranked right now. In the future, is there room for growth with Kyler? Because of the team that you had mentioned what the Cardinals have around them, the players that they've stuck on defense, and offensively, it's mostly the same team, plus Isaiah Adams at the right guard position and Will Hernandez, I guess, probably going to be the backup. Where would you project Kyler Murray to be next season if you're kind of the belief, and maybe you're not, that the Cardinals are going to be better this year? And with one of the worst schedules in the NFL, that's going to help Kyler get pushed up another tier. And where do you think Kyler is? Like, where obviously where he is now, and then where do you think he will be at least next season?
Well, I felt going into this past year that there were 3 quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa, and Trevor Lawrence, that were highly paid and near the top of tier 3, and I thought one of them would jump to tier 2. Here we are again. All 3 of them are in the top of tier 3 again. So I think I got to see it to believe it. I'm going to project that he's going to be right where he is right now a year from now, until he proves otherwise.
Well, unfortunately, that's exactly where I'm at this point, but very gracious with his time. Longtime NFL writer and reporter over at The Athletic, Mike Sando, quarterback tiers list. Check it out. Subscribe to The Athletic. I have my own subscription. It's like Christmas in the middle, or I guess kind of middle of August at this point. But appreciate you coming on and taking the time out and talking about Kyler Murray with me. And enjoy a little bit of rest and relaxation for the next 2 minutes until you have to hop on your next thing, man.
I sure appreciate it. Thank you, Ben.